All right, well, welcome today to Peter Butchen. We are happy to have you here to bestow some wisdom to some prospective business students. I believe we're all business here today. I'm not sure, maybe they can introduce themselves. And I'd love to kick us off with you maybe just telling us a little bit about your career trajectory and what landed you at your current position of Vice President of Pricing and Inventory with the NFL.
Man, it's a long road and one that was unexpected. This was not even an industry I knew existed. I was going to go to law school after I got out of Oneonta, and a friend's mother's cousin's aunt, that kind of relationship, told me about a job that was open while I was waiting to go to law school. So I said, great, I'll take the job for couple of months, and then once I get into law school, I'll go to law school. And once law school came around, I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I was working at an ad agency, buying national media time. At the time, it was television only. It's before the internet, and I stuck with it. I said, man, I think there might be a career in here, and that was in 1984, and I've kind of stuck with it all along. So it was kind of by accident. Didn't know I wanted to do it. Came out of school, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Didn't know anybody. Had no connections, and I kind of just fell into it, luckily, and I've been doing it since. I started at an ad agency, and then I stayed at that agency for about 20 years. So it was a long haul. Unusual to say the first job for that long. And then I went over to Viacom. I worked on VH1, which is a cable network, and then I was there for 2 years, and then the NFL had an opening, and I had a friend here. And it was a good match. So I've been here since 2007. So, going on 15 years. So, not an exceptionally exciting career in terms of number of jobs, but, relatively stable. I think it's probably unusual to have only, 3 jobs in your career. Probably turnover is, a lot more common now. But, that was my path.
Fantastic. As a follow-up, semi-related, could you describe your day-to-day responsibilities?
Yeah, so my role here is there's a sales team that goes out, and we represent NFL Network, we represent NFL.com, NFL Mobile, so owned and operated media assets that the NFL has. So we don't sell the Super Bowl, we don't sell Sunday games on CBS or Fox. We sell NFL Network, NFL Mobile, and NFL.com, and some social media as well. My job is to make sure that the salespeople get as much as they can for the properties that we have. So I'm kind of watching the register and maximizing revenue. I'm also making sure that they sell everything, because there's certain things that are easier to sell. So if we have Thursday Night Football on NFL Network in October, that's fairly easy to sell. NFL Network in June, when we're off season and it's after the draft, but before the preseason, that's a lot harder to sell, but you have to sell everything. So my team packages everything together, whether it's on digital assets or on linear assets, television, and we make sure that everything gets sold at an appropriate price. So that's basically what I'm doing.
Thank you. As someone not in the business, I would not have known that to be your day-to-day responsibility. So that's
right. And people don't even think, but if you think about everything that all media that you consume, for the most part, has some kind of advertising in it, because that's how it's supported. So either you're paying a subscription, or you're getting it for free, but you have to be exposed to advertising. And so there's someone like me at every media company, or a couple of people like me at every media company, that makes sure that, if you're watching television, or you're on a web page, or you're on your phone, that you see an ad. You don't see blank space. You don't see static on television. There's always an add-on in that space, and that's kind of what we're responsible for. And that's the way media companies generally make money, either that or through subscriptions. Those are the two ways for the most part. So it's kind of a corner of the media business that nobody really pays attention to. But it's necessary. And the good thing is, you want to try to get into a field where there's more than one opportunity to have a good job. So in this case, all media companies, any media company, big, small, has somebody like this. So you want to try to stay in something where there's a big supply of jobs and constant demand, so that you're not kind of cornered into a, hey, I have to stay here because I have no place else to go. That's a rough place to be. So it's something you want to consider when you're looking at jobs, is how how open that career really is. And you guys can unmute, you can ask questions. I mean, you don't want to hear a monologue. I want to answer the questions that you guys want to know about. So I don't know if you're business majors or economics majors or whatever, but ask me. Now's a great opportunity to find out what you really want to know. Things you can't ask on a job interview, you can ask me here, which is can be fun. Nathan Palmer, come on. Unmute, ask. I see you hiding behind a big N on your screen.
Hi,
Hey.
I'm Nathan. I'm a sophomore sports management major, and I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of curious how, like, did you do any internships? Did you have any extended learning while you were in college?
I did an internship at a company called First Albany in Oneonta. They had an office in Oneonta, and I set that up myself. They didn't have a formal internship program, but I set that up because I thought I had an business economics major, and I thought I would end up going to Wall Street. And then that didn't pan out. I did an internship for First Albany, didn't really care for it that much. And then said, I'm going to go to law school, and then ended up in advertising. So internships, I don't know how involved Oneonta is in placement of internships. I don't know how much recruitment there is, but if there's something you can do, if there's an area that you think you're interested in, you could do an internship. It's a great opportunity to test out and see if you actually like it. You said you're sports management. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So, that you're picking a tough field because it's a very competitive field. So anything that kind of with that high of visibility, like sports management, is tough. So, even though you again, I don't know you, but maybe you're well connected, maybe you're not connected at all, but you need to use all of your connections to kind of cut through the noise and get elevated, so that you can get an internship or a part-time job or whatever. Even though you might not know anybody directly, with social, it's the beauty of social media now, is that you're not just connected to your circle, you're connected to everyone else's circle. So you need to utilize that kind of circle of people and their circles and their circles. You can go 2, 3, 4 out. It's not even someone you know directly. You can know them indirectly and kind of say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Does anybody know anything? When I got my job in advertising, it wasn't my parents. My father was a mailman. My mother was a seamstress. They didn't know anybody. And it wasn't like the next circle out. It was like a circle, like 2 or 3 out of that. And again, it's before social media. It was a little tougher to do, but you can make connections. It can be your cousin's friend's neighbor who's connected somehow. And if they know, you have to let people know what you're looking for and what ideally, where you'd like to place. And you'd be surprised at where a connection comes from. That's like the biggest learning I've had through my career, is it can be a random conversation with random, you don't think that they have any connections. You don't think it's going to turn into anything. It's just somebody you're talking to. And if you have a conversation, say, hey, I'm Nathan, and this is what I want to do, whatever specific area you want to go to in sports management. You don't know where that random connection is going to come from, and what it's going to turn into. And that's why it's important to network as much as possible. You need to network not just with people that you know can help you, but you have to network with everybody, because you don't know where that connection comes from. That's a big learning that I have over the years through business. And it was just, I just had a random meeting up in the cafeteria, and somebody asked about my daughter living in the city, and I gave them, I said the street, and they said, I live on that street. And I gave him the building number. He goes, I live in that building number. I gave him the floor. He lives on my daughter's floor. Now, the chances of me talking to a random person who lives 2 apartments from my daughter is, I mean, it's a relatively meaningless connection. But the point is that you don't know who you're talking to and who they know and what they can do for you. And you have to kind of take that to the nth degree and see who can help you and who can't. It's going to come from someplace that you might not expect. And that's a very important learning.
Thank you.
James, come on. Got to coax everybody out. What do you want to know about? James is doing something else. Matt Rooney, I'm calling you out.
Yeah, I'll turn on the video.
Hey, and we got video too. Wow, nice.
I mean, you kind of just touched on it, but I was kind of just wondering. I'm a senior, and I'm a sport management and business economics major, and I was just kind of wondering, like, what advice you'd have for like someone trying to send out applications and trying to get more like responses out of it, and more like, I guess just like overall feedback. Just try to get the ball rolling more.
You're pretty fortunate because you're graduating in an economic atmosphere that is really to your advantage, because job placements are fairly plentiful, and if you were coming out a couple of years ago, it would be the polar opposite. So you're coming into a spot where, into a time where there's going to be, I think, more opportunities than normal, more opportunities than historic, which is good. It depends on what you want to do, but you have to cast a pretty wide net. If you're sports management and business economics, I'm guessing you're going to try to go towards the sports field, but that's a very narrow field. So if you focus more on the business economics portion of it than the sports management portion of it, it would be great if you can get a job, working for Major League Baseball or a specific team or the NHL or whatever. But there's only a handful of places like that, and the wider the net that you cast, the better off you're going to be. So business economics is a lot wider than sports management. So if you're flexible, business economics, you can go into the finance area. You can go into lots of different businesses like advertising, like what I'm in, because there are people that do that, like me, who do that. Or you can go into sports management, but that's a much wider net, and you're going to have a lot more opportunities than just being narrow. And even if you're, like Nathan's only sports management, but it doesn't mean you have to go into sports. It could be anything kind of business related that you can use that, and then maybe you can fine tune it later on in your career more towards what you really gravitate towards. But you have to be pretty flexible, and you don't know. You might think you want A, and you're going to end up in B, and B is fine. You're happy with B, and who knows? You just don't take one road. Take a lot of different roads, and the more paths you have in front of you, the easier it's going to be to find something that you're interested in, that you can make money in and be happy in.
Yeah, I appreciate it, because I actually am I had an internship with marketing, and marketing and advertising both is something that I am interested in. But I kind of noticed when I started applying to a lot of these big sports companies, or the MLB, or a team or whatever, kind of just never hear back for those type of things, just because there's a million applicants and stuff. But I definitely good advice to be open to business too. That's appreciate it.
And it's also hard. I mean, Believe it or not, I have a hard time finding finding good candidates for the job, because a lot of time, like I'm in the media side, the advertising side of the NFL. So I'm not in the core business. I'm a little side business that the NFL has. Their core business is putting the games on the field, and that's most of the revenue they get is from rights that they get for putting the games on. So if we have $15 billion in revenue, 12 billion of it comes from the game, and the other 3 billion comes from a bunch of stuff. And I'm 300 million. Now, $300 million is a lot of money, but if your revenue is 16.3 billion and I'm the 0.3, I'm to the right of the decimal place. So I get inundated. So when we post a job, we get inundated, and I mean inundated, with people who want to work at the NFL. And it's when I hear somebody say, I love the NFL and all I want to do is work at the NFL, that's the last person I'm ever going to hire, believe it or not. I don't want somebody who's interested in working at the NFL. I want someone who's interested in working in media, because it's a media job. I'm not on the field. I'm not in the stadium. I'm not talking to players. I'm sitting in front of my desk on a computer. I'm dealing with the NFL content, which is great, but I don't want somebody who lifelong dream is to work at the NFL. To me, that's death. And I will shy away from, I'll never hire anybody like that. But if I have somebody, a candidate who is happy working at the NFL in media, or they could work at Fox in media, or they could work at Disney in media, or they could work at wherever, Facebook or Twitter or whatever, it doesn't make a difference. If I have someone who's interested in a media career, that's an attractive candidate. Someone who's interested only in the NFL, not interested. And I imagine that the other leagues feel the same. If you're going into like the media part of their business, because the media part of their business is media. It's not the fact that they play football and they make money from football, or they make money from putting whatever game they're putting on, is irrelevant to the work that we have to do. So, we're not on the field. We're not throwing balls around it's the same job that I would do here that I would do at Disney or at Twitter or at Facebook or wherever, or Google. Doesn't make a difference. So, try to focus in on a specific area, because, each league and each sports asset has their own needs by department. So, if you're in officiating, that's one thing. If you're in media, it's something completely different, even though you're working for the same company. So you need to kind of narrow down within, you can't apply just to MLB or to the NFL for something, because you have to apply to that specific job. And then you have to tailor that pitch, if you will. Let's say it's a sales pitch that you're making towards that person in that department. And the last thing you want to do is say, all I want to do my whole life is work for the New York Yankees. That you'll never get the job that way. That's a tough thing to do. Also, what you have to know is when you're dealing with leagues, we're a private company. We're owned by 32 people, 32 owners of the teams. And I can have a job open, and then, an owner comes in and says, my cousin's uncle or whatever needs a job here, hire him. And all of a sudden I don't have a job open anymore. So you could be a great candidate and still not get the job, because you're dealing in you're not dealing in the real world when you're dealing with a league. You're dealing kind of in a different sandbox. So you need a wide net, which is why I'm saying don't just try not to focus in just on leagues or sports teams or sports entities. Kind of broaden your horizon as much as possible, and I think you'll have better success. That's my opinion. So, Jess, anything? Jess Wilson, come on, I call on you.
Sorry, I'm a little late. I don't know.
That's okay. We're just taking questions. What do you want to know?
I guess
It's like a radio call-in show.
I guess the only thing that is going through my head right now might be irrelevant, but what is your opinion on getting an MBA right out of college, with your bachelor's?
I preface this by saying I'm giving you what I believe is right. Doesn't mean it's right. So if I was talking to my son or my daughter, this is what I would tell them. Again, it doesn't, you're going to talk to 12 people and get 12 different opinions. My opinion is that you're better off working for a year or 2 or 3 and then getting an MBA. Because I have seen firsthand lots of people who say, I'm going to get an MBA in marketing. I'm going to pick something. It doesn't matter what it is. And they get an MBA, they come out of wherever with whatever degree, and they take their first marketing job, which is entry level. So they're making, not that much, and they hate it because they've never really been exposed in the real world. Being exposed to it in school is different than being exposed to it in the real world. And you need to really know what you want before you take the time and money that you're going to put into it to get a master's. There are certain areas where you have no choice. My daughter is a teacher. She needs a master's to teach, and she knows she wants to teach. She's going right into grad school, but that's a very specific situation. If you're talking about something much more generic, like an MBA, and regardless of what specific area, my suggestion is to work in that area and then go back to school. First off, it gives you an idea if you like it. Secondly, the company you're working for very often will pay for all or part of your degree. So if you've got to spend another, I don't know what an MBA is these days, 50, 60, 75,000, 100,000, I don't know what it costs at certain schools. But if you're going to shell out that kind of dough, you might as well work and let the company pay for a chunk of it, if not all of it, at least some of it. And this way, it's a more sure path. It costs you less, and you're also, while it's still going to cost you money. At least you're not pissing it away on something that maybe I don't like it. I'm guessing, and that's a very important thing to me. Is that if you're going to go through that time and effort and cost, you need to know that at the end is something you really want. And I personally don't see how you can know that coming out of school, coming out of undergraduate. I mean, unless it's something so specific that you've wanted your whole life, my opinion is I would wait. But that,
Thank you
again,
so
that
much.
doesn't mean it's the right answer for you. But you asked my opinion, so that's my opinion.
Thank you.
No problem. James, you back? What happened to James? He's quiet. He's behind his cell phone.
Peter, I have a question, and
Yeah.
I think I need to get a new question because you've already answered it. But I'd like you
Okay.
to just elaborate a little bit. You talked about internships and how they could benefit our students.
Yeah.
So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. And then part 2 of the question is going back to 21-year-old Peter, what would you do differently? What could these students do right now to change things, for a different trajectory of where their career may go? If you could have a redo, what advice would you give back to 21-year-old Peter?
First of all, I'd wear fewer hats, so maybe my hair stayed in. That's number one. I think you need to. I talked about it before. You need to really be outgoing and network with people, because I used to work for a guy who he owned the ad agency I worked for initially, and he always used to tell me, he goes, you don't get business by showing a bunch of slides to a bunch of strangers, which means that sending in a cold, to translate it for this conversation, to send in a cold resume, to look for an opening on whatever job site you're on or whatever, without knowing anybody or having any insight or having any information, is the hardest way to go. Because if you're applying, there's thousands or hundreds of other people applying, and you need, when I get handed a stack of resumes like that, I'm not going to look at all of them equally. If somebody comes and says, hey, pull this one out and look at this one, or someone comes and says, hey, my cousin, whatever, I'm going to look at those first. And if they're applicable, I'm going to bring those people in first, only because, and when I get a stack of resumes that thick, it's all the same to me. They're all unknown entities. They're all the same equal risks. And for me to sit and look through 500 resumes takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy. And quite honestly, if I'm interviewing for an entry-level job, it doesn't really matter. That you have to find a way to sift through that and kind of get through, kind of narrow it down. if you're looking at something and you have too many choices, the initial reaction is to shut down. You know, if any of you, again, I'm talking to the wrong group, but when I was redoing my kitchen and you go in for a piece of granite for the countertop and there's 500 different pieces of granite there, I can't look at 500 pieces of granite. Show me the top 10 and I'll pick from that. You can't inundate somebody with choices. So you need to differentiate yourself. And the way to do that, I keep saying, is through networking. And just because your initial group of people doesn't know anybody or is not helpful in that field, doesn't mean you don't know somebody, 1 or 2 or 3 people removed, who is. And that is the most vital thing that you can do. And I'm shocked at how few people do or do it well. And you need to really, you know, advertising works. I mean, I've made my whole career in advertising. And you need to advertise to those people, hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I do, and this is what I'm looking for. Does anyone know anyone? Can anyone help me out? And there's no harm in letting people know that you're looking for a job in a certain field. And I guarantee, you know, 8 times out of 10, not every time, but 8 times out of 10, someone's going to say, here, go speak to Joe Blow over here. You know, he's my cousin. And as soon as you have that in, that gives you the leg up on the stack of resumes that's like that, because you're going to get pulled out. And then it's on you. Once you get in the door, you have to prove yourself. You have to interview well. You have to have a resume that looks okay. Doesn't have to be the best resume in the pack. Just has to be appropriate. Don't have a resume that's packed tight. So if you look at a sheet of paper and there's 1,000 words on it, it just becomes a gobbledygook of stuff. No one's going to sit there and read it. See, it's got to be light and airy, to the point. Cut out all the crap about, you know, the time you were a cashier at the pier. It doesn't matter. If you're a cashier at the pier and that's your experience, that's great. You were able to hold a job and whatever, but you don't have to have 9 bullet points elaborating on the cashier job. It's kind of a waste of time. So don't be, you know, just because your experience might not be, you know, at a Wall Street firm or at a top ad agency, whatever, doesn't mean it's not valuable experience. If you're able to hold a job and you're able to have the same person bring you back summer after summer, and it doesn't matter what you did, but you can see that somebody worked, they held a job, they were a responsible human being, and that's half the battle. And then one that gets you in the door, and then you have to be, you know, you have to shine through. The best thing you can do, and again, there are a couple of things. People like talking about themselves. So if you can make some kind of personal connection with that person, so you go in, I'm assuming that will be on Zoom at some point, and you're going to go for a job interview live. Look around that person's office and try to make a connection. If I have a Jets hat, in my case, a Jets hat, you could say, oh, I see you're a Jets fan. I love the Jets. I've been following them, whatever. You find a connection. Look for a picture on the desk. And if the picture is of their family on the beach, say, oh, what beach was that? I love going to the beach. Ask them what beach vacations they have. And you make the personal connection, and you get them to talk about something that they enjoy. Not necessarily about work, but it's about a personal endeavor, something that they enjoy on their off time, and they will speak about it. They can go on for 10, 15 minutes, and you can interject a little bit, and then you've softened them up. And now it's not so hard to make, you know, then you could tell them about your experience and why you're a good candidate or whatever. But you've softened them up, because now they're thinking, I had a great time when I was in Cape Cod at the beach. It was the best beach. That's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about beating you up and trying to make you squirm in your chair. So anytime you can make a personal connection in a conversation, that's always key. And that's just a good life hack to meet people. And again, networking, I can't understate how important networking is, and how important it is to talk to as many people as possible, wherever you can, whenever you can, to whoever you can. You don't know when the opportunity is going to show itself. And I promise a lot of times it's going to come up in places you don't expect. And I'm telling you, that's what it is. That's a huge percentage You know, you don't have to always be at the right place at the right time, but you have to know when to take advantage of a situation. And by networking, you're taking advantage of everybody that person knows. Very important, because you're unlikely to know enough people. But if you know somebody who knows somebody, that's all you need. And then you have to take advantage of it. So,
Thank you, Peter. That was lovely.
I don't know, lovely, but we'll take it. How else? What other questions? James, come on. I see you're off mute now. No more? So what else do you guys want to know? I'm happy to, like I said, I'm happy to answer any question.
I have a question.
Yes.
So for the NFL, what other business related jobs do they offer, and do you collaborate with them a lot?
Yeah, so it's a relatively you know, there's 1,000 people at the league. I work for the NFL, for the league, and it's relatively small as companies go. And I work in an area that is kind of it's not the main part, it's not the game, but it's a sponsorship. So I work with the sponsorship team. So if you see that, you know, the Pepsi halftime show at the Super Bowl, like they sold that. Anheuser-Busch is the official beer of the NFL, or whoever is the, you know, Verizon Wireless is the official telecom partner of the NFL. Those deals are all getting sold by sponsorship team, and we're dealing with that. And that's kind of a business related field. There's also consumer products. So if you go into Dick's Sporting Goods and you buy a hat, a Jet hat, or you buy a Buffalo Bills hat, or whatever, a Green Bay Packers t-shirt, those are all licensed deals. So you can't just put the Jets logo on a hat and sell it. You have to buy the rights to do that. So so the consumer products is also, you know, it's $1 billion business that they have, getting people to put our logo on hats, shirts, and whatever, and sell. And that's another business related kind of part of the business that you have. You know, you get into officiating, got nothing to do with business. You get into, you know, even marketing, not so much. You know, it's more, I think of that as more creative than business. But there is, you know, a whole marketing group. But there's, you know, there's probably other 1,000 people. There's probably 250 that work in that business kind of atmosphere. And you know, something like a business economics degree would be appropriate for, you know, for most of that. It would work. So
does for the consumer section of the NFL, like, do you hire merchandisers and buyers for those? Do you have internal people for that?
it's a group I work with, not for, so I don't really know exactly what their hiring is, but they don't, they're primarily dealing with outside vendors. So they're negotiating on behalf of the NFL. So if, you know, if Adidas wants to make, you know, they're cutting deals with Adidas and Nike. So they're negotiating on behalf of the NFL to get the best deal that we can for us. So the most amount of licensing rights. So give us the most amount of money to put, you know, the Jets on a hat or Green Bay Packers on a t-shirt or something. So it's not so much, we're certainly not buyers of stuff. We're selling the rights to our marks and logos, our intellectual rights, if you will, to other companies for them to sell the goods. The NFL is really good at cashing checks, so they don't really own that much. But they, if you think about the business model, it's great because Pepsi will come and give us whatever $500 million a year for the right to market cans with NFL teams on them. Now, if you think about it, they're paying us for the right to promote our brand, which is unusual. Most companies have to pay to promote their brand. We get people to pay us just to promote the brand. So it's an unusual business arrangement, and it's not typical. But when you have a brand like the NFL, you're able to get away with it because people want to use that. It's a popular brand and it's kind of universal across the country. It's more male than female. It's a little older than younger, but for the most part, everyone associates with it. And I forgot where I was going with this, but anyway, that would be like a business. That would be more business than anything. So sponsorship, consumer products, and advertising, the ad sales team where I am, would be kind of the area that would work. And I assume that most other leagues have it, and most companies have something similar. So it's a pretty open field.
And since you work more on the media side, do you prefer people that have like a media studies major or like a concentration, or are you open to like more broader business as well?
I'm going to let you in on a secret. And again, I might be off on percentages, so don't take me literally. A large portion, I'm going to say 65% of the decision-making process is this person going to annoy me all day? So is this person somebody who's going to fit into the team? Again, we're dealing with a sales team. So you're dealing with a team that has to get along and perform well as a team. It's not an individual goal, it's a team goal. How are they going to fit in from a personality standpoint? Are they capable of doing the job? And are they going to be annoying? And beyond that, the skill set is you have to have some math aptitude. You have to have, some level of competence in terms of stuff. But I've hired business economic, business people. I've hired people with, English majors. I've hired people with whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm not really looking, quite honestly, at the GPA. I'm not looking at the major, although I'm a little interested because someone who's an English major might be less apt to be good in math than someone with an economics major. Economics, I'm guessing you're going to be good in Excel as a general rule. So that's what I'm looking for. It's not so much the classes that you took in economics, it's the aptitude that you have. So do you have a math aptitude or don't you? You're going to be standing in front of sitting in front of a computer doing spreadsheets a lot of part of the day and dealing with numbers. Is it something that's going to make you miserable, or is it going to be something that you can deal with? But don't underplay the social aspect of the interaction of an interview, because there are a lot of competent people, but there are also a lot of people who are annoying. And if you come across that's why I was talking about earlier, making a personal connection with somebody. If you can make that personal connection with them, again, look around and find something in their office that's of personal nature that you can talk about. And that opens up a whole lot of opportunities. It's a little stupid trick, but it's important because that puts you on a different level. And as soon as you're talking about, if they have a beach picture and they like the beach and you're talking about the beach, all of a sudden you're not annoying, you're engaging. And it's a stupid little trick that works. It doesn't work everywhere. It's not going to work every time. I'm not giving you the universal keys to the kingdom, but it's going to work more often than it doesn't work. And it's something that people really fail to do. And one other thing, if I see a resume that I'm looking through and I see Oneonta, I immediately stop and I start looking. And I think about 3 years ago, I had an Oneonta alumni come. We had an open position. It was entry level, and she came in, had a great interview, really good interview, very nice person, great, connected, all the good things. She didn't follow up with a thank you. Something as stupid as a thank you sunk her. She didn't get the job. So always follow through. When you meet somebody, shake their hand, or I don't know if shaking hands is still acceptable with COVID, but make eye contact, sit up straight, dress appropriate. I mean, these are stupid things, but they matter. And it can make the difference. She didn't get the job because she didn't send a thank you. That's my pet peeve. And if you're not if you're not going to follow up with a thank you and may I have the job, please, kind of follow up, what kind of follow up are you going to have with clients? That's the first thing that goes through my mind. Is, are you going to follow up with clients? Are you going to make sure that they're in a good place? Are you going to make sure that they have what they need? And if your follow up is poor, it's not what we need. So that was a really vivid example of someone getting sunk for something really stupid, like really stupid. And I felt bad doing it because I really liked her. I thought she would make a great team member, but there were other people who were equally as good, and her Oneonta kind of leg up got washed away because she did something, and she called, and I told her why, and there was just silence on the phone. You know, I'm happy to tell her why she didn't get it. It doesn't, I mean, it's a learning experience for her. And I'll bet you that she followed up every other interview with a thank you. You know, you might think I'm a jerk for doing it, which is fine. But that's my thing. And you don't know what that person's thing is. So you need to cover as many bases as possible. Sit up straight. I have people slouch and yawn during interviews. I'm not going to hire that person in a million years. It's so basic that you don't think you have to mention it, but you should see what we see, and it's really basic interviewing 101 that you're not taught. And you know, if your parents don't tell you and your professors don't tell you and no one's going to tell you, how are you supposed to know? Sit up straight, look someone in the eye, make some personal connection, follow up with a thank you. Sometimes you go through an interview and you meet 4 or 5 people, ask each one for a business card, because there's no way in an hour you're going to remember everyone's name and number and email. So you say, hey, thank you. It was really nice meeting you. Do you mind if I do you have a card to give me? And this way you know exactly who you spoke to. You don't have to guess at their spelling of their last name with a Z and a Q in it. You could send them an email or a text or however you want to say thank you. And it takes 2 seconds. And so few people do it. It's amazing. It really is amazing. It's such a basic thing. So I went off on a tangent there. Sorry.
I actually have another question.
Yeah.
So you said you work on teams a lot, and we do like a lot of group team projects in school, obviously, but I was kind of wondering how working on group projects in college then translates and how it differs from working in teams like in an actual job, and what challenges maybe you've had.
I think, you know, I'm trying to get the saying right. There's a saying that says, the surest way to starve a dog is to ask 2 people to feed it. And if you think about it, it's a really good saying. When you're dealing with the team setting and there's multiple people working on the same project, the core thing to have is accountability. And everyone's got to say, I'm responsible for A, and this person's responsible for B, and this person's responsible for C. If everyone says, yeah, this is what we're going to do and let's do it, it doesn't get done. And I think you guys have probably witnessed that in your own, in your own setting. So group projects are great, and group and team things are great. But what I've learned through the years is there's got to be accountability. Someone has to be responsible for it on a certain date, and they have to understand and be clear on what they owe. And as long as that is laid out and that is managed, there's usually no problem. It's when things get soft and it's like, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to get this done. And it goes, goes by the wayside and nothing happens. And that's the killer. So you just have to, be accountable with a clear understanding of what's due and when. And then it generally works fine. And I think you find that in class projects too. There's always going to be a couple of slackers who don't do anything. And there's going to be, the 2 or 3 people in a team of 8 who do 90% of the work. It's just the way it goes. Did that answer the question, Stephanie?
Yeah, that answered it.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. What do you guys want to know about when you're on an interview, anything?
I have
Nothing?
another question.
Okay. You're a good
Since-
facilitator.
Since you're the vice president of pricing and inventory, did you assume the vice president role right away, like when you applied for the job, or did you move up in the company? And like, how do you recommend moving up?
Yeah, I've been here 15 years. I was hired as a director and now I'm a vice president. I think I started the group when I got here, and now we're 12 people in the group. And I was able to get from, it's hard to get to a VP level here. It was hard to get to a VP level. There weren't that many. And they didn't, since I wasn't in the core part of their business, they didn't really understand what I do. And so over the years, I had to convince everybody that what I was doing was important and demonstrable benefits to what we did. And I was able to, break them down a little bit. You can't expect to get handed anything. Company's going to do as little as they can until you leave. And then once you threaten to leave, they'll usually do something. Or a lot of times they will. So, it's like anything else. A lot of times in a lot of companies, the only way to get ahead in some businesses is to leave and go somewhere else. So that's another thing I was lucky with, but that most people have to change jobs and change companies in order to make more money and get promoted. A lot of times, once you come into the company, you're getting an annual raise, which is, kind of a couple of % to account for inflation. And then, once in a while, if there's a job open, above you, you can pitch it and hopefully get that. But that's a much slower road than changing jobs or changing companies. When you change companies, you go somewhere else, it's a whole new opportunity to reinvent yourself. So you can have a $20,000 jump in pay by going from company A to company B, and you can go up a job level or two or whatever. That's the easiest way. And to do it by staying at the same company over time is a much tougher road. And I feel like as time goes on, it becomes more and more unlikely that someone's going to have a career path similar to mine. The fact that, I had a job for 20 years, a job for 2 years, and now a job for 15 years. That's an unusually stable job path, and it's highly unusual in today's business atmosphere to have a career path like that. So I would, if I were coming out of school now, I would quite honestly expect to change jobs every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on situation, depending on how the economy is doing, depending on what I wanted to do. But I think that's probably more likely than sitting in a job and getting promoted and getting raised as you go. It's probably an unusual thing to happen in today's job market.
So you don't really see it as like a red flag if someone has changed jobs multiple times in like a shorter period of time? Or...
Well, it depends on how and why. Where did they go? So I always look at, if somebody's changing jobs every 18 months, that's a red flag. But if somebody's in a job for, let's say, 2 years, and then they take a job in the same industry, but at a different company, and I've seen they've gone up a level, that's not a red flag. And then they do it again 2 or 3 years later, that's not a red flag. I'm looking for progression in a reasonable time period. If somebody is unwilling to stick around for 18 months because they didn't get promoted, I mean, things just don't happen that quickly. So if someone's going laterally after a while, or you see constant shifting of jobs, that's a red flag to me to say that person's not going to stick around. When you hire someone new and you train them, it's a big investment in time and effort. And you don't want that. You want some payback on that investment. So you don't need someone to stick around 20 years, but you need someone to stick around long enough so that you're getting at least what you put in out. So changing jobs, again, especially in today's atmosphere, if you're looking for like a normal progression, I'm going to say every 2 years, every 3 years, and a progression up in title and in what you're accountable for, that's pretty standard. That wouldn't be a red flag at all.
I'll kind of do a last call, simply because I don't think the students on this realize how awesome this advice is. I wish someone had been there to tell me some of these things, like as simple as you said, Peter, a thank you letter, or sitting up straight, and all those things. So
It's sometimes it's the blocking and tackling, the really easy stuff that matters the most. And
absolutely.
and you don't have to be a genius to do it. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to get the job. You just have to be the best. You have to be well-rounded. And if you're well-rounded and do the right things, yes, it's not going to work every time. And sometimes you do the right things and you still don't get hired. But what you're trying to do is increase your chances of getting hired. And by not doing all those stupid little things, you're increasing your chances and you're eliminating the people who do from the mix. And that's the best you can do. And you hope for the best on the rest of it.
Certainly. So, any last questions from our little peanut gallery today?
Peter, I would like you to weigh in just briefly, if you will, for our students. You were talking quite a bit about the interview and the process, all the things that they're going through, and I love the thank you. That's always key. What if there's a faux pas during the interview? They've exaggerated the truth, or whatever they've done, the elephant in the room, who knows? What would be your 2-second response that they could come back from that? How could they regain their composure after, whatever happened? Who knows what's going to happen in an interview? And we've all had something happen. What could you tell our young students here that it's not the end of the world? How could they come back from the whatever that happened during the interview?
Listen, it's like being on a diet. If you eat a piece of cheesecake, you'd say, all right, I had a shitty day, and you move on to the next day. You can't come back from being caught in a lie. To me, again, for me, if I see somebody lying, an outright, meaningful lie, that forget that. If you have, if you don't give the best answer, move on. It doesn't matter. Any one thing is probably not gonna sink you for the most part if the other things are okay. So, you just have to take a hit and move on, and you can't focus in and say, you can't let that screw you up for the rest of the time. If you have think of it like a baseball game. If you have a couple of at-bats and you strike out the first time, you get up and you don't strike out the second time. And if you strike out the second time, don't strike out the third time. You got to pick yourself up, dust off, and move on. And at the end of the day, it's a job interview. You didn't kill anybody. You're not gonna disappear from the planet. You're not gonna go to jail. If you don't get the job, there's other jobs to be had. But you can't get frazzled. You can't get to the point where you're frazzled, and don't let it get inside your head. If you make a faux pas, or whatever you want to call it, it's easy. Just move on, and just it's not the end of the world. Don't lie. If you lie, it's okay to I don't want to say exaggerate, because exaggerate is wrong. But if you want to build up a little bit and prettify or whatever, beautify what you did, that's okay. Everyone does that. But if you lie, you will get caught. I had somebody, I know we're running out of time. I had somebody here who we hired, and NFL does background checks, but it takes a while. We hired him. He was here for, 9 months. Great employee, really good. And NFL security came back and said, this person didn't graduate. He went to Stony Brook, didn't graduate. So I called him in. I said, Rob, did you graduate from Stony Brook? Yeah, I graduated from Stony Brook. So I said, did you get a diploma? So he goes, no, I walked to graduation. I said, no, I know you walked to graduation, but did they send you a diploma? Did they send you a piece of paper with a graduate degree, with a degree on it? No, I was like 2 credits short. And I was like, that, like, this was a combination of him exaggerating, lying, but it was also a little bit of naivete, where he thought because he walked, he graduated. But I had to fire him because he got caught. Don't lie on anything material. Don't mislead. It comes across shitty. You're going to get caught. It's going to come out at one point. The best thing about not lying is you don't have to remember anything. Once you lie, you have to remember that lie forever. And you're going to get caught. You're going to trip yourself up. And especially if it's something material, like something about, whether you graduated or you did, or you had a job or you had whatever. Just be straightforward. Nobody's a choir boy. Everyone has something going on. And there's no reason to be ashamed of it. As long as you didn't murder anybody or do something like that. Just accept it and move on. And no one's gonna hang you up on something kind of irrelevant. But once you start lying, 100% it's gonna come out at some point. You're gonna get nailed, and that you can't recover from ever. Not within that ecosystem. So that would be my suggestion, is just be straightforward, and you are what you are. You are who you are, and embrace it, and hope for the best. And everyone finds a job. Every pot has a lid, so you'll be fine.
Thank you. That was, well, I'm going to use lovely again, but you might, but very helpful for our students.
Feels like my mom is on the line. It's great. Everything I do is wonderful.
Hey, wait a minute.
Goodness. Well, I do want to be respectful of your time, Peter, and the students who may or may not have classes after this, but seriously, thank you very much for this candid conversation, your advice today. It's always lovely to have you, hopefully in person next time, but we're glad to have you join us in Zoom as well. So thank you again, Peter.
Happy to do it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Bye,
again.
Peter. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.